to the Magical Mystery School, and thank you so much for coming back for Astrology Lesson 25. Transits Part 2. The Sun and the Moon. All right, here we go. And we started out last time just talking, I gave you a nice introduction to the transits. And I think without any further ado, I'm just going to bring the camera down and we're going to look at the wheel and see see if we can explain these transits a little bit better. So I'm going to put you on pause. Okay, so here's our wheel, and I put the transiting planets on a little red sticky, and I put the natal planets on a blue sticky. There's a little N and a T on there, but I don't know if you can see those too well. So just in general, as we're talking about these transits, blue will always be natal and red will always be transit. So first one we're going to talk about is the sun. And remember, it's wherever the sun is in your chart. Well, I guess it's going to move this direction. It's going to shine a light on. It's what you're going to be mostly conscious of and that type of thing. So when that, so what's so nice, like I said in last week's video, that this, where the sun is, what's nice about this is within a year, you can see what every aspect is going to be in your chart, no matter where it's going to be. And also you can see like what house is being lit up. So that's what I was talking about with the sun up on the midheaven. That 10th house is your career house. That is a time to really look for the new job, ask for the raise, ask for the promotion, that kind of thing. Whereas sun down in the 5th house, that's the time to ask somebody out on a date and see if you can get some romance going in your life, right? So over here in the 2nd house might be when you want to make an investment. Definitely up in the 8th house, other people's money, make an investment. So, so start to think about these houses, and the sun can you can start to get in tune with your own cycles that way. Okay, and also besides the sun, is kind of men in general in a person's chart. And the other thing, we'll talk about this more when we get to the slower moving aspects. The sun is also one of the trigger planets. So if you have a slow moving transit in your chart and you're not saying, what's the big deal with Neptune squaring my Mercury, right? Well, when the sun comes along and shines a light on that Neptune squaring your Mercury, you'll get a better sense of it. So that's another great thing about the sun transits. And getting to know your cycles. Now, the main thing I want to point out is what's called the solar return. Now, that's a very popular chart for people to get done. And what that is, that tells you, that's a chart of when the sun comes back to the exact degree and minute that your natal chart, that your natal sun is. Oh, there's our bells. And and a lot of people will get a chart run for that time when that becomes exact. And it's not always exactly on your birthday. It's always, a day before or a day after, no more than that. But it is always good to have those, to get that chart run for that exact time. Now, you'll probably be in a different location because most of us, a lot of us anyway, have moved. We don't live where we're born. So you will have a different location. I even knew a guy who, your solar return is supposed to kind of really give you a good look at what your next year is going to be like. And this guy, he would literally go to different parts in the United States, maybe around the world, I don't know, but definitely within the United States, to get a better chart for that moment when he would have his solar return. Now, I'm not advocating anything like that. You're going to hear me say this, don't don't tie yourself into knots about these things. Do the best you can. Use these things as a guide, and don't get too crazy about it. But the solar return chart is a really cool chart for kind of like your annual checkup. And I do encourage everybody to get an astrology reading once a year. It's good for you. Okay, so there's your solar return. Now let's talk a little bit about the moon. Now, when we've got the moon in your chart, the transiting moon whizzes around this chart relative to everything else. I mean, it goes through the whole wheel in 1 month. So it's only spending 2.5, 3 days in each house. And whereas with the sun, when we have a transit, you're going to feel that certainly a few days before the exact and a few days afterwards. But with the moon, it's more like you're going to feel that more like just a mood, okay? Like maybe your mood changes. You're only going to feel that transit for a few hours in a day. Oh, and just a reminder, moon, rules women, our unconsciousness, our habit patterns, things like that. Now, one thing people do look at is is a lunar return. That's just like the solar return, but that's going to happen once a month as opposed to the solar was once a year. And that gives people a chance to, look at their chart that once a month, that kind of thing. So that's another thing that's totally possible. Now, another thing, Debbie Kempton Smith, another great astrologer, she really recommended what's called green light, red light days. Now, when the moon comes around and hits your natal sun, this kind of aspect, this is going to be like your own personal new moon, right? When the sun and moon are conjunct. And what she always said, that when the moon is going through the sign of your sun, your natal sun, this is going to be like a green light day time for you. So that 2.5, 3 days when that moon is in the same sign as your sun, you're gonna have some good intuition. You're gonna kind of know what to do, that sort of thing. And when that goes all the way around and is opposite in the opposite sign, so if you had sun in Scorpio, the opposite of that is Taurus. That's going to be your red light days. This is a time like, don't make any quick decisions. Think about it. Sleep on it. Wait till maybe that moon gets into Gemini. Don't rush it. Don't push it. And maybe don't get out in front of the public, that kind of thing, quite so much. So now, how do you find out when these things are? Well, remember these calendars I showed you last time? Now, I use the Llewellyn calendar now. I used to use Jim Maynard's calendar, but he quit doing that a couple of years ago. Boo-hoo. So that's been kind of tough. But here, let me just show you, so here's an example of way I see how I go through and just literally mark up. I put in all my own transits and do it all by hand. Now, I do this because it really gets my head into my chart, into what's going on, and I just like doing it. So I'm sure there's computers that would do the same kind of thing, but I did want to show you how these calendars work. Now, let me get my kebab stick here. Okay, so when you look at these calendars, you're going to see how there's the Leo symbol. So on this day, the moon is going to be in Leo. Now that third just means that it's the third quarter of the moon phase. And I'm not really going into phases much more than full and new. So that's a whole other class on itself. So let me know if you want me to go in that direction. But like I said, we're sort of just icing the cake in these classes. And you can see here, you're also seeing, so the moon square, this is all transit to transit. The moon squares Jupiter, the moon trines Sun, and then there's a Mercury sextile Saturn. So, and it gives the times and all that kind of stuff. So these calendars are kind of fun to look at. I sort of have it next to my bed at night and look at it and enjoy it. Now, what other things do you want to use this transiting moon for? Well, I use it, for planning parties, because, you want to have a party when the moon is in Sag or Leo, Libra, Gemini, these fun kind of social signs. I mean, if you have a party with the moon in Capricorn, you're going to be lucky that anybody shows up. I also use transiting moon for gardening. So when you're actually planting plants, and I don't mean, weeding or maintaining, that you can do anytime. But if you're actually digging the hole to plant the plant, you want to pick an earth sign or a water sign. So Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, Virgo, Pisces is a really good wet sign. So, so that's another way I use the transiting moon. And also with buying things. Now, we mentioned about, with the sun is up on the midheaven for looking for a job. Well, the moon is, rules kind of, your environmental aspects, what's going on in your interior. So I always like to buy, especially like dishwashers, refrigerators, anything I want to last, not just 10 years, but maybe 20 years. Moon in Capricorn, you want to buy things when the moon is, in a very stable, long-lasting sign like that. Also, we talked a little bit about, if you want the romance, you might want to wait till the moon is in Leo. Traveling, moon in Sag, get started on that trip and that sort of thing. But again, don't tie yourself up in knots. Just do the best you can. Now, there's also a thing called the void of course moon, and I want to show you what that is. So what that means is when the moon is going around, going into each sign, when it makes its last aspect, so let's say this sun is like at 28 degrees Scorpio. When that moon gets past that last aspect, it goes void of course. And that can be, and it doesn't have to be a conjunction. It could be a square, trine, sextile, anything. But when that moon makes that last aspect to, and I'm sorry, it's not to the natal, it's to the transiting. Sorry about that. So when that moon aspects another transiting planet, that last time it's going to be called void of course. And that sometimes it can be just a few hours, sometimes it can be up to like a day and a half. I mean, if the last the planet that's furthest along, say it's at 18 degrees or 15 degrees, that's kind of rare, but if it's fairly early, then that void, of course, can last a really long time. Now, I had a friend who always submitted her taxes on the void of course moon because she wanted them to kind of go through and nobody notice her taxes. She didn't want to, she had this fear of being audited. Personally, I'd be sort of afraid they'd get lost in the mail. But, each astrologer to their own. So now let me show you how that shows up on these calendars. Okay, so here's again the Leo moon, right? And see how it says VC? So the moon goes void of course at 9:11 p.m. So it doesn't make any aspects. And we can see down here, sorry, I guess it's because I'm wiggling. See how down here the moon sextiles Venus at 9:11? So that's the last aspect. It doesn't make any more aspects till the moon goes into Virgo at 10:50 p.m. All right. So like I said, that void of course, and you can see how this day is a very active day. Look at all the transits going on there. Whereas over here, you know, sometimes there's quite a few most days, but sometimes there'll be none. Okay, so that's the void of course moon, but I do want you to know about that void of course because it's such a popular thing that's talked about. And let's see. And the final thing I want to mention to you is the new moon. So whenever the moon and the sun conjunct, so when they're conjunct, the sun is so bright because they're in the same place in the sky, it obliterates the moon. That's why it's the new moon and we can't see it. And when that moon though, and that's the time, and I've done this for years. I you know, even you know, sneak off to the bathroom during the new moon and do my little intentions or my prayers or whatever you want to call it. But the new moon, that's always a great time to set your intentions. And depending on the sign that it's in, so if that new moon is happening in Scorpio, that's a great time to like, I want to figure out how to best invest for my retirement, or I want to figure out my trip, that sort of thing. But then as that moon moves around your chart and gets, so it's opposite, so now that sun, the rays of the sun are hitting the moon and making it full. That's the full moon. So, so watch out for that, because here your intentions are growing, you know, getting waxing, getting brighter, brighter. And then by that full moon, hopefully you will have an idea if your intentions set at the new moon are going to succeed or come to fruition, or should you let them go. And then you can use this, the waning moon, to start thinking about, you know, what's your new intentions going to be? How are you going to get ready for that next new moon that's going to be in the next sign, and set your new batch of intentions. So there you go. I just wanted to mention those, that new moon, full moon. So as you can see, I'm not using the moon so much on a personal, like how it relates to my personal chart, because they're so fleeting, they're just a couple of hours. But these larger new moon, full moons, things like that, getting in touch with those are really an important thing. Okay, so I've talked long enough here, and I just want to say thank you so much, and we'll see you next time, and we'll talk about Mercury and Venus. Bye for now.